Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Lowdown on Low Code. We've got a pretty cool topic we're going to tee up today. I'm here with John Reimer, who's going to be my co-host for today. How are you, John?
Just fabulous, Rob. Great to
Just
be
dandy.
on another episode with you.
Yeah, this one I think will be I think this one's interesting. We'll tee it up in just a second, what the topic is, but we don't usually do this, but we want to introduce what some of the upcoming guests that are coming on, because over the course of the next couple of months, we really have kind of a who's who of the vendor community that's coming on, and we're really excited about this. So next week, we have Don Sherman, the Chief Technology Officer at Pega, kind of an important player in this space, John. So
Yes, indeed.
yes, indeed. We have Ed Jennings, the CEO of QuickBase. They've kind of been around in this space for a little bit. Ed's an old friend, and it'll be wonderful to have him on. One of my favorites, Gustavo Gomez, the CEO and founder of Bazaji. They've been doing wonderful work in this space for a long time, and Gustavo's backstory on how he got into this is just fabulous.
Right.
John, we have this one's particularly exciting. Paulo Rosado, the CEO and founder of OutSystems, and I believe he coined the term low code.
Well, I'm afraid you've been misinformed, like Rick in the desert. No, Paulo really helped to create this market by founding OutSystems, and I'm very excited to have him on. He just he's a force of nature in this market and always has been. And it'll be really great to be able to talk to him about where it all started, where it all came from, but more importantly, where it's going. I mean, he's very much a visionary. I'm very excited about his guest appearance on our
We're very
podcast.
excited as well. Hey, John, speaking of forces of nature, Jesse Shia of AgilePoint. We've been
Absolutely.
very close friends with Jesse for a very long time, and I think it's fair to say that will be an entertaining podcast. Jithan Bhaskar, general manager of low code business at ServiceNow, a huge player in the space, very important player in the space. Yeah, that'll be a great show. Suresh Sambandam, the CEO and founder of KissFlow. So there's more in the hopper, folks, but that's kind of the next, I'm looking at it like probably two and a half months that are scheduled out, and more wonderful guests coming on behind that. But just super excited at how, and gratified. I mean, John, it's like I always go back to, I think I've used this on the line, the Sally Field line. Like, you like us, you really, really like us. Like, I'm
Well,
just,
hopefully, Lowdown on Low Code has become kind of a safe space where people can speak candidly and share their experiences. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is just help uh, customers and clients advance their low code journeys.
yeah. And I'll just sort of close this out with one more thought, which is one of the things, in addition to the amazing guests we've had on, one of the things that has been so gratifying is how candid every single one of the guests, CEOs and founders, who are really candid about where and how to use their products most effectively, where they fit, candid about where they don't fit. So yeah, I love your term. It's been a safe space. So on to today, which is actually not going to
Yes.
be a vendor spotlight. So this one started, John, when you and I going back and forth around the concept of builders versus developers, and this kind of goal we've always had around digital transformation, which does anybody really understand what that is? And we had a long conversation and really kind of landed on this idea that what we're really focusing on here is optimization. right? And John, I love your definition that you've used for optimization. I'm wondering if you have it up and handy or can get to it pretty quickly.
I can get to it.
Gee, Rob.
I mean, just the put me on the spot. I mean, it's business optimization. First of all, Rob, we've talked about process optimization. That tends to be kind of a techie definition, but business optimization is the continuous optimization of business operations that are supported, of course, by business processes. And whether those processes are automated or not, they constantly need to evolve because companies evolve, markets evolve, opportunities arise, challenges arise. So, being able to nimbly approach the optimization of business operations is really, in my mind, that's where you get to by digitally transforming.
That's the pot of gold. That's what we're all going for. And I think, John, we've struggled throughout the podcast. We've struggled throughout the 10 years that we've been working on this research with this concept of that ending with the citizen developer, which is not necessarily the case. So one of the things that we've been working on is this concept of, we don't really know what the name of it. We'd love to get sort of the audience feedback, but the optimization champion, the process champion, the person in the organization who is in a business role, but is
Yes.
empowered and has the tools available to make the work go better. And with that, we have someone on today who actually has played that role, right? Within her
Right.
organization. So if we could turn the camera on, today's guest, see if we can get her.
Someone near and dear.
There she is. Oh, wow, you look
There
familiar.
she is.
So today's guest is works in marketing at Nintex. It's a vendor, but she's here representing the business role. Sarah, I'm going to struggle with your last name a little bit. It's got a lot of letters. Could you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Yes. My name is Sarah Koplowitz. No relation to any of the Koplowitzes on this podcast. Obviously, it's a common last name. But I work at Nintex in the marketing department. I'm a campaigns manager right now, but I've taken on roles in the marketing operations team in the past, which has led me to a little bit of a process optimization, as you put it, part of the job that I really enjoy.
So, in the interest of full disclosure,
for joining us.
Yeah, in the interest of full disclosure, nepotism notwithstanding, Sarah is my daughter. But we are really, have been impressed, and she spent time with the entire Analysis.tech team talking about this role as we were bringing this out. So, Sarah, we always have to ask, what is your background? One of the things we've always really enjoyed here is the credibility of the guests that we've brought on, and nepotism notwithstanding, you come from a very credible place in this. Could you tell us how you got involved in this whole role of process optimization, where it began?
Yeah, well, excluding the hours and hours that I had to listen to my dad talk about process automation at the dinner table, and actually be woken up by his calls with vendors during his time at Forrester. I've been at Nintex for 5 years. I started there as an intern in the marketing operations role that I mentioned before. Ended up going into a contractor role, going full time. So I've been with the company for a long time in a couple different capacities. And in the marketing operations space, was doing a lot of sort of day-to-day operational work that does require some pretty heavy processes that involve a ton of different systems, a ton of different people, and it sort of led me to helping to optimize some of those processes for the team and for the business, selfishly because it made my job a lot easier and kept me out of trouble from dropping the ball when things got super busy and we had to scale.
So one of the things you said, Sarah, that I think is important is that the work is interesting. This optimization work actually interests you, and you were. I'm guessing that that was a motivation. That was part of your motivation. It's just you want to make things operate better, but also it was just interesting work.
Definitely. I think it started as sort of a necessity, but then grew into more of an interest as I started to understand what these tools were capable of, and the ways that working with the marketing tech stack was already something that I was interested in and already something that I was doing. But being able to build on top of what we already had and kind of create an additional layer of a workflow to connect all of the stuff that we were doing um, just definitely is really exciting, and there's so much opportunity to kind of keep getting better and keep getting more automated, and so yeah, definitely something that has grown into an interest over time.
So what was
Let's,
the problem?
yeah, thank you.
What was the problem that you recognized and then went about trying to fix?
So it kind of started on an email level. So we were, as an operations team, sending out a lot of emails through Marketo, and managing, a two-person team, probably managing at the time maybe 10 marketers across the globe. They were a lot faster to grow the revenue side of things as well than the operational side as it goes. So that sort of supporting function became more and more difficult. We were supporting more and more activity across the globe. And we were ending up in a space where both from doing our jobs was difficult because we're managing a ton of stuff at once. We didn't have really strong SLAs around how much time we needed to build out QA, get approval on an email and send it out, schedule it out to go out to the audience. And so that was really challenging. We ended up kind of spending most of our days just doing, operational work and running through that process over and over and over again. Bandwidth was really tough. But oftentimes it also led to mistakes. And, this is customer facing collateral. So if we send out an email that has an error in it to 500,000 prospects, it's really not something that's going to have a positive impact on our brand. It is a big deal. And so that's kind of where the challenge began, is how do we solve for this? How do we make sure that we don't have these mistakes? And then how do we make this job easier for us to do as well, so that we can spend our time looking at higher value? I don't want to say higher value, but more strategic work as a team.
So Sarah, so within that, this is a process, right? And John and I have talked about a lot about this. Processes are a different breed of application. You said you did it for selfish reasons, right? But it benefited everyone else who participated in the process as well, right? So, there's transparency. Everybody can see where things stand in the process. Everything, you can load level things, to your point. Obviously, quality goes up, effectiveness of the process goes up. But there's this kind of starting piece, which is, number one, you have to convince people that they want to do this. And number two, you have to get a common process that everybody can agree upon. What was that part of it like?
So to start, we had to kind of build the process, because we weren't really starting from a place where we had defined, like I said, defined timelines, defined, requirements when we, go through that process of submitting an email request, and we didn't have kind of set approval processes, things like that. So we had to build all that from scratch. So a lot of that came from just having conversations with the team, understanding what everybody's different requirements were, what everybody was kind of juggling in terms of timelines and dependencies here. And we are, like I was mentioned earlier, I do work at Nintex, so we've got some software to help us out with that. We ended up putting everything into Process Manager and building out process maps to visualize this stuff, to kind of try and understand, on another level, how we can kind of do this better, how we can optimize this, how this might all flow together. And that's pretty much been the first step, and has continued to be the first step of any sort of optimization process that we've gone through since then, because we're not going to jump into automating a process we don't understand. That's going to just make us do the wrong things faster. So
Boy, is that a key point. You don't jump in to start automating a process until you really understand it. It's interesting that there was a process of sorts, just didn't work very well, and it sounds like it wouldn't have scaled. He was struggling to scale it. So, how did you get people to sign off and agree to the new process? Did you automate it first, or did you just run it manually for a while?
So we always run things manually for a while. How well that works, it is, hit or miss, because you're kind of asking people, please clone from this template, please do this, please do that. And it's a lot of manual change, which, change management is difficult for us when we go from something that's manual to automated, just because you're asking people to do something differently, even if it makes their job easier. So to ask someone to do something differently that objectively makes their job harder, it really is difficult. And it is kind of a frustrating first step. But as long as you can kind of see the way it flows and understand that this does work and this does get us from like point A to point B without errors, and everybody has the right amount of time to do their job, and you can kind of see what's working and what's not.
Right.
So
So when it came time to automate, sorry, Rob, I'm really excited by this.
go ahead. I get to spend all kinds of time with her.
So when it came time to automate, Sarah, did you sit down with Nintex and start building the automation? Are you a citizen developer?
So, and I know I've sat down with you guys before, so I'm maybe cheating a little bit and queuing up something that you want to talk about. But I don't view myself as a developer. I don't have kind of the training. I don't have the coding background, which I know we say you don't need. And I think, as someone who has a background with Marketo and with marketing technology, I think I could have learned how to do it if I sat down and I took the time in the training courses. But I cheated a little bit. I work at a company that's got quite a bit of resources to actually build this stuff out. We've got people on IT that are dedicated to building out processes using our own technology. And so I did take that route. But it was a ton of hands-on work, regardless, to kind of guide how this process should look and how it needs to be architectured, and what kind of the field input requirements are, what kind of the pick list values might look like, what systems we need to include in the process. So it's not as simple as handing off that process map and getting back a fully automated, beautiful process. That would be amazing. But that's not the case. It does take a ton of guidance and collaboration with the IT team.
So it's not because Nintex's products were deficient. It's just because there are all these things, human things, around the building out of the automation on Nintex, right?
Yeah, there's just a ton of stuff that is, really detailed, that needs to kind of be understood properly. And so, could we put that into a process map? Maybe, but it really took me sort of building things out in Excel, and sitting down for weekly meetings, and and running through, a lot of what we do is living in honor right now. If you could see how many projects say Sarah test, probably drives people on my team crazy. But I'm testing this thing all the time, right? So, and even now it's been live for 2 years. There's, I'm testing it pretty frequently. Anytime we make a change, anytime I'm trying to maybe see, is something broken? Someone, gave me a hint that something's not working right.
Hey, so I wanna pop in here and just say this is like, there's a subtlety here that's really important to understand, and I think is really key to this idea of the optimization champion, John. So so Sarah didn't put her hands on the keyboard yet. Maybe she does that at some point in the future. But you're an organization, and you're looking to drive this type of optimization. This was important, right? This led to more effective marketing outcomes. This led to more effective campaigns and certainly drove efficiency. But kind of, John, if we kind of think about how this started when we entered the industry, you tell somebody what to do, they'd go tap it into a stone tablet and bring it back and say it's wrong. But this role that Sarah played in this optimizer role, even though she didn't take the primary role of development, the back and forth iteration, the fact that it was working on a live application that could be iterated upon is fundamentally different and fundamentally involves the business much more deeply in the automation that eventually drives that optimization. So it's a key difference. It's a critical difference. And in my mind, John, I think this sort of movement of the thought process from automation to optimization, from optimizer to builder developer, is a really critical distinction.
Couldn't agree more. Sarah, I think what really excites me about your story, the story of this experience, and it's a bit, for me, it's a bit of a mea culpa, because Rob and I went pretty deep on the citizen developer idea while we were working at Forrester. And that is a piece, that is a part of the landscape. There are instances, and organizations like Shell have been out very public about individuals who are subject matter experts who are able to themselves provide automation. But those don't tend to be the kind of processes that you are describing, where you've got Asana, you've got Marketo, you've got Salesforce, you've got different teams. There's a whole lot of coordination that is required. And my concern is that if we focus too much on the term development, on citizen development, and on automation, we overlook all of those coordination human aspects that if you don't get those right, you fail, right? You could deliver an automated process and people turn their back on it. That's an old story, right?
Yeah. So very interested in. So first off, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you taking time from your busy day, and sharing the stories with us. You are my one of my two pride and joys. So obviously I take a great deal of pride in what you have to share. But that being said, John and I have been at this for 10 years. We haven't run across that many stories of people who are doing what you do, and are in a position to share it. So I think it's valuable for the audience. Thank you again for coming on.
I think, Rob, I think the kind of work that Sarah is describing, it's very, very important work. I think we weren't looking for it hard enough. Mm-hmm. And I really, again, mea culpa on my part, because my focus was so much on the tools, the platforms, looking at the tools with the mindset of, if I'm a business person and I don't have the background in database design or UI development, or can I actually create something with this tool? And that's important. That's a piece of this. But I think I over-rotated on it. And Sarah's story, I think, opens our eyes that there are other models here and there are other roles here that in business optimization and in automation that are important for us to recognize. It's not just empower 1% of your workforce to go and build web applications.
Gee, John, do you have anything you could show the audience that illustrates that?
Just funny enough, Rob, I just happened to. So, pardon me while I share. So, Sarah's experience, we think, really presents different roles and a different model for how business people can get involved in a very serious way in driving business optimization, and it helps outline other role players that will get involved. So, Sarah, you said you don't consider yourself a developer. I mean, if somebody came along and proposed that you put citizen developer on your business card, would you be excited about that?
Although I wouldn't feel super honest about that.
So here are three roles that we think are highlighted, and three major roles, put it that way, the key roles that are highlighted in Sarah's experience. And we don't think Sarah's experience is the only time this ever happened. It's been going on for a while. So Sarah, we think of as the optimization champion. She was the catalyst. She recognized that that a very informal process needed to be formalized in order to scale and in order to ensure that the brand was properly represented to prospects and clients. So that's important. Recognizing the opportunity is important, and business people obviously are right in the on the coal face, can see where the things are breaking down and where improvements could be made. Sarah contributed requirements, but as an optimization champion, she went and talked with the various players in the process and found out what they needed, found out what would really work for them as a starting set for requirements. And then she actually worked, Sarah, you actually worked on the team that actually ended up delivering the automation, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what did you do? What did you do on that team? You weren't building anything, were you?
No, so it would typically be kind of a weekly cycle of running through the progress that that the actual developer had made. His name is Pat, and the form is named Pat, which is dorky, but it's running through the progress that he had made, and then kind of doing a little bit of a show and tell, talking through new things that we needed him to automate. So it would be kind of giving creating a work schedule for the next week of, I'm going to pass you these materials. Here's what we can work on, to move this ahead, and then meeting back up and kind of continuing to iterate, continuing to test, continuing to kind of sit down together and take a look. So, there were times where we'd spend the whole time in Salesforce looking at a Salesforce campaign structure and understanding, like, this is what we need. These are the fields that need to be driven. So this is data we need to be capturing on the front end in order to make this happen. But then other times we'd be looking at the back end of the workflow and actually sitting there and kind of making changes together, saying, why is this field not filling out correctly? No matter what region you input for this webinar, the Salesforce campaign says it's for America, but actually it's for EMEA, and it's a specific webinar, and what's causing that to break. So going through and trying to make those fixes on the fly.
So the metaphor of a guiding hand comes to mind. You're the person who sort of has the big picture of the business, but also these what needs to happen in these core applications in order for the thing to go. So anyway, that to us is a role. That is, we're calling it optimization champion, bit of a mouthful. Loved for people listening, if they've got better ideas, would love to hear them. The other two roles, though, Sarah, you mentioned that you had resources within the company to actually use Nintex's technology to optimize its business operations. So tell us a little bit about that person, and who were they and what did they do?
Yeah, so typically there used to be sort of a project submission process you can go through with IT to say, like, hey, I've got a need. We could use some help on either Process Manager or using, Nintex Automation Cloud, which is our workflow technology. And here's a description of the process, and they'd assign you someone. So we got assigned Pat. We got very lucky. He's really, really great with NAC, which is our automation product. We spent a ton of time with him. Like months and months going through building these things, iterating it. This project, I think I mentioned it started with emails, but it really spiraled out, and it ended up becoming a full webinar process, which we then expanded to other event types. So sponsored events, trade shows, in-person live events, which at the time we weren't doing very many of because of COVID, but now we are. And so that work has been really valuable as of late. But we spent months working with him, and he got promoted. I'm not positive, probably a year ago, to actually be the head of a kind of center of excellence team to do just this and to do this full time.
Yep.
And so he's actually now leading a team to do this as well.
Awesome. So this was a gentleman who had who was a software developer. He had that background, right?
You know what? I think he studied something non-technical and landed in this space. And I don't think he's a coder, actually. I think he's kind of a self-taught, just
Okay.
guru. But he was on the IT side. But no,
Right.
he was not. I don't,
Okay.
and maybe I'm misspeaking, but I don't think he was a software developer.
Well, how many software developers have I met over my career who studied archaeology in college? Quite a lot.
Music,
Anyway, the
music,
point
a lot
is
of
that
music majors.
the point is that you worked with a builder, and this was a role, and this role was person who was going to working with you, build the automation. Um, I've become much more excited about the term builder than the term developer, and in part because folks like you have told me I don't like the term developer. If I'm going to have a role in this thing, don't call me a developer. And I worry that language is important, and if we demotivate people, so builder, and I would add that there's absolutely no reason at all that a person who comes out of the business and the ability to work with a Nintex, which is really designed for business people. This builder role does not have to be filled by a professional developer. It could be filled by someone who just has aptitude, for building. And then the third role is something that I think is kind of maybe a little bit buried in your story, but you've got Marketo, you've got Asana, you've got Salesforce, and these things need to be administered, don't they? And so working with the folks who are responsible for administering these apps is another very important role, because those apps are crucial to the automation.
No, for sure. And our Marketo admin played a pretty upfront role in these projects as well. He had to help kind of build out those API connections. He had to help build out things within, we had to kind of get permission from our Salesforce admins to actually build these workflows that would affect the Salesforce ecosystem. And so those admins were super crucial, not just for sort of permission about what we can go do in their tools, but also kind of giving us the ability to do it.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us today, but more importantly, thank you I think you've really helped advance our thinking. My gut's telling me that our understanding, my personal understanding of how business people will help to advance business optimization, I need to learn a lot more. And
Yep.
your story is very, very helpful. And I suspect that, Rob, what we'll end up doing is a number of profiles of role players, and this is the model that they followed to actually optimize a business operation. And certainly the individual citizen developer working on, building an application for his or her team is in the frame, absolutely. But I think this is one of perhaps a number of other models that I think we're going to be able to bring out, and hopefully will help decision makers advance their strategies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, John. And I think, I think we can kind of, end here with the request to any of the listeners. I kind of started off by saying, look, Sarah's got an interesting story. We're having trouble finding these. If you're in this role or you know of people in this role, we would love to talk to you as part of this research, right? This whether you are simply working with people to optimize processes or putting your hands on the keyboard as a citizen developer. We'd love to hear more from you. We'd love to build this story out beyond obviously marketing into other areas of the company. So please contact us. Again, listen in over the course of the next couple of months. Don Sherman of Pega, Gustavo Gomez Bazagi, Ed Jennings of QuickBase, Paulo Rosado of OutSystems, Jesse Shih of AgilePoint, Jithan Bhaskar of ServiceNow, and Suresh Sambandan of Kislo. Amazing guests coming up. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for co-hosting, John. And thank you again, Sarah, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.